Hey everybody, this is Brant from Nutrition First Coaching, and in today's video we're going to talk about what you think you know about your body so that we have a common communication system of what's going on with your body. We're going to start with metabolism, talk a little bit about structures in the body, and then the digestive system and the microbiome. So stay tuned to learn all these different terms and maybe the definition of what you didn't know about these terms, so that you have a common ground of communication when you're talking to somebody about your health and your nutrition. All right, let's get into the video and let's learn a little bit. What do you think you know about your body? I'm not trying to be funny with this, but there's so much misinformation out there in the social media space, in all the influencers out there and people with their opinions and what they're pushing onto you. But if you don't have a common definition or a language to speak from, then you might think something means one thing and somebody's saying it to mean something else. And then there's all kinds of mass confusion. So I think everything has to start with education and a common ground of communication. So first I want to talk a little bit about some kind of common myths out there. And some of the crazy ones you hear is that it doesn't matter how many calories you eat, it just matters the food quality. Well, ultimately, it's always going to come down to thermodynamics in your body, and it's going to come down to calories. Yes, there's situations where hormones can affect things. And yes, there's things where stress and other parts of your life are going to affect what's happening in your body. And of course, the quality matters, but a calorie isn't just a calorie. Calories matter, and the more you eat, the more you're going to gain, essentially. And controlling the calories is always one of the first steps. Now, another really common myth is if you just do the right kind of exercise, you'll lose weight. Well, most of us don't know what that means, and you can't just exercise and exercise more and expect to be healthier. That's another stress on your body, and it's going to make you feel worse and eventually break you down. So how about this one? Too much protein will damage your kidneys. If you don't have a kidney problem, you don't have kidney disease, too much protein is not going to damage your kidneys. Protein is going to get processed by your body, and if it has more than it needs, it's going to get turned into a carbohydrate, essentially. It's going to get turned into energy and glucose in your body, and your body's going to excrete what it doesn't need, and it's not going to damage your kidneys. Foods that spike insulin will make you fat. Well, there's some truth that insulin, yes, is a storage hormone, but just if a food spikes insulin, it still comes back to the calories in and calories out. If you're eating too many calories and you're spiking insulin, then yeah, you're going to store more food, and that's going to be in the form of body fat, and it's going to make you gain weight. Eating mostly healthy fats will make you a fat burner. Now, I'm a proponent of having some metabolic flexibility and not just living on carbohydrates all the time, but your body's going to burn whatever fuel source it has the most availability from. So if you eat a lot of fats and you eat a really low-carb diet, you're probably going to burn more fat, but you're probably not going to do very well in kind of glycolytic exercise that's anaerobic, that requires a lot of energy production quickly, because fats can't be processed like that. Now, if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of simple carbohydrates, then you really are going to be a sugar burner, and that's just how your body goes back and forth. In an ideal world, in my opinion, you can eat fats when you're in this resting and digesting state, but if you're going to exercise, you need carbohydrates to fuel those, hopefully complex ones, and then that's going to be when you can really use those for energy, and your body's going to be really flexible metabolically. So getting into kind of breaking some of those myths, I think, is the first part of this 2, maybe 3-part series of these videos. The next part is I want to talk about some common definitions, and I have my computer here because I want to make sure that we're getting these definitions correct. Most of these are out of Webster's Dictionary or checked off Wikipedia. So the first ones here are, what is your metabolism? So I think the best way to describe metabolism is it's a series of physical and chemical processes that occur in your body or an organism in order to maintain life. Sounds really simplistic, right? Well, it is, but this involves production of energy with different energy systems. This involves digestion of food and assimilation of those nutrients into your body so they can be used for energy systems, creation, maintenance, and destruction of cells and tissue. So it's massively complex inside your body. But bones, organs, blood vessels, muscles, all that stuff require metabolism. And if you're metabolically unhealthy, so this is when you're starting to get into disease states of obesity, high blood pressure, blood sugar regulation problems into the diabetic range. Maybe you have elevated lipids, or what we call high cholesterol, elevated lipidemia. Those problems start to really wreak havoc on your metabolism. And that's where you start to have things break down, and that's where disease and overall dysregulation of systems happen. So what is metabolic conditioning? This one kind of, really got educated on this coming through the CrossFit world. And the best way I've ever heard it explained is metabolic conditioning involves your metabolism and conditioning your metabolism. So if we're doing what's called a Metcon, we're literally taking the foods we eat, we're breaking them into energy, and we're using those to condition our aerobic and cardiovascular system, fuel our muscles, make our muscles strong, and kind of repair all the tissues in our body. So that's where the quality of the foods come in. In the book definition of metabolic conditioning, it describes exercises that vary from moderate to high intensity, or what we call Metcon exercises. And these are intended to be completed anywhere from, I put 7 to 30 minutes. It could be longer, I guess. But you specifically use different energy pathways. And, that's not the really main point of this, but the shorter and more intense a workout is, the different energy pathways you use. And the longer it gets, the more you go into these oxidative systems where it's really important to be able to digest carbohydrates and keep producing ATP for energy along the way. So the next one, this relates specifically to strengthening. So anabolism and catabolism, kind of big words for anabolism is growing muscle or tissue. So maybe you've heard of like an anabolic steroid. That's what's happening in that effect. So anabolism is the metabolic process in an organism by which energy is used to make more complex substances, such as muscle tissue, from simpler ones, such as proteins. So this is also called constructive metabolism. So it's not just muscle, this is bone, connective tissue, blood vessels, nerve tissue, you name it. Anabolism happens in the body because our bodies are repairing and growing, as well as happening relatively simultaneously as catabolism. And when this is happening in balance, things are going well. Catabolism is simply the metabolic process by which more complex substances, such as proteins, are broken down into simpler ones, such as amino acids. And together with the release of energy, this is also known as destructive metabolism. So this is breaking tissues down, and if we don't have the right nutrients in the body, the diet and the nutrition plan isn't on point, and we're exercising a lot, or we're trying to build muscle and we're lifting weights and we're tearing the muscles down, this is when we start having issues with injuries, fatigue, chronic fatigue, overtraining. All those things start to happen, and we have some problems in the body. So as we're younger, we have more anabolism and things are happening. As we get older, there's more catabolism, and we want to try to mitigate that along the way. So let's talk about a few body structures here, because I think these are important as well. Muscle, tendon, and ligament. So muscle, as we know, moves joints. And the way it does that is a muscle can lengthen and shorten, or contract and relax. And when it does this, it pulls on a tendon. So a tendon is what connects the muscle to the bone. And with that leverage in the body, it makes things move. So if your bicep contracts, it's going to bend your elbow by pulling on your radius where it's attached at your humerus. So you have this muscle attachment point. It pulls on one end as it shortens the muscle belly, and then that causes movement in the body. So tendon connects muscle to bone, and ligament connects bone to bone. So if you've ever sprained an ankle, then you know what it's like to injure a ligament, and there's multiple stages of this injury level, anywhere from just a slight inflammation of it to a full-on tear, or what we call a rupture or an avulsion injury, where the ligament will actually pull some bone away from where it attaches because it's such a strong structure. So, our muscles grow, our tissue can hypertrophy or get bigger. but we need good anabolic processes to help repair tendons and ligaments through daily activities, and especially through exercise and sports. All right, the last things we're going to talk about here are digestive system and the microbiome. So the digestive system is this closed loop. Let me read all the things that are in our digestive system. The mouth, the pharynx or the throat, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. So it's this closed loop from our mouth all the way through to our anus, our butt, and then out the body. So the reason this is such a huge focus, and you might hear this term leaky gut, or there's digestive problems. Some of them are kind of irritable bowel from the one end of the spectrum, all the way up to Crohn's and all kinds of digestive problems that affect the intestines. And this is where we break down the food, and this is where we break it into smaller molecules, and then we digest and assimilate those nutrients into our body. So if these processes are getting disturbed, then we start having all kinds of problems. We may be eating and doing a lot of the right things, but we're just not absorbing the nutrients we need out of those foods. And this is where the term microbiome comes in. And specifically talking about the digestive system, we have this microbiome. It's full of bacteria, even viral loads, and even some parasitic things. And all those are in this balance, or they need to be in this balance to help with digestion and with breakdown of foods and turning some of these different broken down particles into different chains of fatty acids and helping us to digest and absorb some of these things. So this is where this huge focus on the gut microbiome comes in, and how we need health in the gut microbiome, because the majority of our immune system is contained in here. And all these little healthy bacteria and bugs in there are trying to balance things out to keep our whole system healthy. And if you've ever heard the term, which I think this makes a lot of sense too, is, I just had a gut feeling about something. That's because you're communicating, your gut and brain are communicating through part of your nervous system. And there's a huge connection of how our gut and our microbiome work and how it's connected to our brain through our vagus nerve. So there's a lot of communication going on through there, and it's a really integral part of not only health, but immunity health and fighting off disease, which is trying to invade our body every day and keeping us as healthy as possible. So I know this is a lot of info to kind of digest here, but we're going to break it into a few different videos, this being the first one. I hope we can get educated, have this common language back and forth, kind of push out some of the myths. I know that took up part of the beginning of this video, but some of the just garbage that's kind of pushed by people and some of people's opinions versus what's the actual scientific truth out there. Let's keep communicating about your health, and to your friends, if you know somebody that you think would benefit from this, maybe they've told you some of this stuff and they were completely off base with it, send them this video. Maybe they'll find a little bit of helpful information from it. Pass it on to your friend, like and share and subscribe and all those other things. And I'll talk to you next time.